The summer I learned to listen to old walls began with Mira and the house at the end of our lane. The one that wore its paint like a tired smile and kept its windows half curtained against the world. It was a gentle summer, as summers go, when the days are long and the river wears its own silver. And I, then a creature of small hands and larger questions, found in that house a way to pretend the world was more kind than it ever could be. Our grandmother kept herbs in jars on a high shelf and a yellowed journal that smelled of rain and pine needles. Mira and I would slip into the attic after supper, where the air smelled of old wool and moths and promises that never pained us. There, in a trunk that rattled when you shook it just so, we found a glass bowl, thin as a storm wash and etched with stars, misty with the dust of 100 years. The journal told us, in a language I would not trust again until long after Mira vanished, that there were sounds you could hear only with your skin and your breath, if you learned to listen where the walls kept secrets pressed against their own timber ribs. We had a ritual, a childish one, built from an impulse that felt as old as the house itself. We placed the bowl upon the sill of the first window in the attic and held our hands flat against the cold glass. Then we whispered the name of whoever we most longed to meet again, and told the house to carry our longing, if it wanted to wherever longing really went. We spoke as if the house could not refuse. This, I suppose, was the part Mira trusted most. The words were simple, almost silly. Mira, if you can hear me, come back to this room and tell us you're safe. The last part was always the same, spoken into the glass with a careful breath. Please remember us. If you must forget anything. On the third night of these rites, Mira pressed her palm to the glass and smiled the way a child smiles at a painting that looks back. We felt an answer, soft, insistent, a wind not from any door. But when we leaped back from the window, we found the room had shifted its weight. The air tasted of lilac and rain, but the lilac was indoors and somewhere else entirely, and the rain sounded like a thin whisper behind a door we had not opened. It would be years before I understood what Mira's smile meant then. A warning, a blessing, the first breath of something that did not belong to us, but was already deciding if it would let us stay. The house remembered more than I did, and perhaps more than Mira ever did. We did not talk about it much after Mira's mother found us there, our knees stained with dust and our eyes too bright for ordinary things. The town said Mira's father had taken her away after a storm, a river storm that came like a reader turning a page too quickly, leaving us with the sudden feeling that the world had shifted while we blinked. No one spoke of what happened in that attic after that last night, though the journal's margins pressed their ink into my skin with the stubborn calm of a memory that will not quit. I did not forget Mira, not for a long time. But time does not always remember with the same mind. Years turned the attic into a rumour, and the rumour softened into a habit. Whenever I returned to the house as an adult, I could swear that the walls had learned my name, and learned it softly enough to sound like a friend who had drifted out of sight, but not out of reach. I never spoke to Mira about what we did that summer, as if the memory could be kept in a pocket with a gentler curve than the world allowed. The house, which had nothing to fear in old stories and everything to fear in old hearts, slept with its mouth slightly open, like a person listening to a distant clock that counts your years. In the evenings, I would sit by the window and watch the river lose its voice to the dusk, and sometimes a breath would pass across the pane that wasn't mine. It was nothing dramatic, nothing that would make a good fright story, but enough to remind me that there are memories you can fancy away, and there are others that will not be fobbed off by a polite hand on the shoulder. The house kept them all, folded like a set of letters never mailed. Then, one winter when the world outside forgot how to warm itself, I returned to the house, with my own little one at my side, a child who asked me to tell him about Mira and the attic mirrors. The house wore the snow like a blanket that could not quite cover the bones beneath. I thought the attic would be the same, but the attic never is. The glass bowl lay where we had left it, but the air around it shimmered with a pale heat, the way a hot street shimmers on a July afternoon. I touched the bowl with the tips of my fingers, and felt not glass, but a soft, living memory curling under my skin, the old ache of a summer that refused to end. The journal lay open on the trunk, as if it had been waiting for me. Its pages were damp with something that was not rain, a scent I recognized not as decay, but as a kind of truth that mortals do not know how to inhabit. On the margins, written in a line that looked as if it had been scratched by a fingernail of frost: Mira. Then Ada. Then Eleanor. The letters did not spell my name as I had learned to spell it. They spelled it as one sees a familiar handwriting from childhood, soft, a little unsteady, with a stubborn insistence that the truth lies beneath the obvious. There were more names, too, those of lives I had only glimpsed through the years, those of rooms I had forgotten I had ever known. The list curled around itself like a coil of ivy, and the attic, listening, exhaled a line of breath that did not belong to any single occupant. The bowl shuddered, and the room brightened with the sort of light that does not come from a lamp, but from the act of remembering itself. The house spoke in a way that did not pretend to be patient. It spoke in a language I did not know then, not in sound, but in the sudden clarity of perception. The house does not forget your name because you forget it. It remembers because you belong to it. And those who belong to it do not leave as you leave a room. They leave as you are claimed by the room, by the corridor you cannot walk past without turning, by the wall that holds your breath in its rough, patient embrace. In the attic, a panel in the wall, dusty but deliberate, lifted almost of its own accord, revealing a narrow shelf where memory kept its most burdensome letters. I found the first letter Mira ever wrote to me, folded and refolded until the creases themselves remembered our days. The handwriting, Mira's, was the same as Ada's and as mine when I was a girl, and yet it was not any of those things in a single, simple way. It was what a house would write if a house learned to speak in the language of